Did you know some people believe that children born of a fairy and a mortal mother grow up to be strong and enigmatic, but with evil and dangerous natures? It is said that these children are highly valued by the fairy. Their desire to reproduce with mortals is only one reason why fairy are believed to abduct humans. And some of the other reasons might surprise you. In this video, let's look at another 5 reasons why fairy abduct humans, and why you best hope you are never one of them. Fairy abduct humans, particularly handsome and healthy humans, to strengthen their own gene pool. If this is so, could it be that the fairy race is smaller than we might imagine? It's generally accepted that they are long-lived, but maybe they don't breed often. Or the urban sprawl of humans has decimated their habitats so much over the centuries that their population has dwindled. Without putting too fine a point on it, let's just say that some humans who have returned from the fairy realm report that they remember very little of the experience. So it's certainly possible that they were used to strengthen the fairy gene pool. I wonder, can this explain special people who appear to be touched in some way? You know, those who are finely attuned to nature or animals, or those we consider gifted in the arts, or those possessing a wisdom or knowing that we often call old souls. Could they be the result of a fairy-human coupling, or just spending time in the fairy realm? But then again, is the notion of strengthening the gene pool just an excuse for fairies to seduce humans they take a fancy to? Well, this question leads us to number 2. Now, I know that you're good looking, but I hope you're not too good looking yourself, because fairies are said to take particular interest in attractive humans. Beautiful humans are specifically targeted for abduction and used for pleasure. But remember, our idea of beauty may be quite different from theirs. So who's to say what individual fairy might find attractive? So actually, every single one of us may be at risk of abduction for this reason. Fairies, such as the Gunkana, are known to use their wiles to seduce human women. They use them up for their pleasure and then dump them. So the lesson here, if you find yourself abducted, seduced by a fairy, don't fall in love. Nursing mothers are at great risk of abduction because they are producing sweet milk, which is considered valuable by the fairy folk. And nursing mothers are not offered the opportunity to nurse a fairy baby. This is something they are forced to do. When we stop to think about it, if there are children born from a union of fairy and human, it might follow that that baby needs a human nursemaid and a human midwife to help it enter the world. So we can find some sense in that, but there are also reports of human midwives being taken to assist in the birth of fairy babies too. And again, we find that they're not offered the opportunity of doing this. They are abducted. They are forced to go. But the upside to these type of abductions is that they are usually fairly brief and the nursing mother or midwife is returned home within a matter of weeks. Many tales from people who have returned from being with the fairies suggest that the only purpose of their presence there was simply to entertain the fairy folk. Entertain is a broad term I'm using here because, again, we find that every single one of us could be at risk. Fairy have certainly used us to entertain them in the sense of having us sing or dance or play music for them or tell them a story. But let's not forget that they are curious folk and no doubt like to get insights into the world of humans, try to figure out how we tick and why we do the things we do. So there could be an element of picking our brains there. Other people claim that they were abducted simply to act as a companion to the fairies, that nothing specific was demanded of them. Now, when it comes to entertainment, we mustn't shy away from the examples which, from our perspective at least, seem to have a dollop of cruelty to them. I once heard a story about a fella who claimed to be taken by the fairies as he walked home across a field at dusk. He said the fairy folk forced him to dance and dance and dance to their music and would not let him stop. Eventually, he fell to the ground in exhaustion, at which point the fairy disappeared. He found himself laying in the field all alone, covered in sweat and exhausted, just as dawn broke. Our last reason is perhaps the most chilling or frightening, particularly if you're a parent. Many believe that fairies are simply enchanted by human children and babies, and that is why they are at such a high risk of being abducted. I find this fascinating, and it leads me to wonder why fairy find human children so irresistible. Perhaps fairy believe that our children are the best of us humans. After all, they are wide-eyed and innocent, free from the miseries and disillusion so often found in growing old. And children are fun. They live in the moment, throw themselves into nature and believe anything is possible. A bit like Peter Pan, if you like, not yet hardened or disillusioned by human life. I wonder if the fairies see themselves in our human children. Of course, their fondness for human children could link us back to reason one and their wish to strengthen their gene pool when the human child reaches maturity. What do you think? Any time spent with fairy folk is fraught with possible danger. I think almost every one of us is at risk of abduction by fairies, but certainly some are more vulnerable than others. So when it comes to the fairies, we must always be cautious. If you enjoy my videos, please consider joining me as a patron. Check out the link in the notes below for more information. Until next time, stay curious and be kind. Cheerio!